Good morning to all of you. Um, it has been quite a long while since we met because last week I was on election training, so I couldn't engage. But today I thought of completing this Molusca if possible. I don't know. Without wasting time, let me directly move on to the study of molluscans, where we will be discussing about two more classes. One is the class Monoplacopora and then Scapopoda. First, let's start with class Monoplacophora under the molluscans. Uh, ಇದಾಗಿಲ್ಲ ಅಲ್ವಾ ಮೊನೋಪ್ಲಾಕೋಫೋರಾ ಹೇಳಿ ಯಾರಾದರೂ ಆಗಿದೆಯಾ ಮತ್ತೆ ಐ ಡೋಂಟ್ ರಿಮೆಂಬರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಕ್ಟ್ಲಿ ಹೇಳಿ ಧನ್ಯ
ಇಲ್ಲ ಸರ್.
ಓಕೆ the word mono there are three words actually mono plax and the phora foreigns what we call mono means all of it's a Greek term mono means single plax means plain Pora means bearer, that is, the animal which is having a single or a one plate, that is, or a shell, that is called as monoplacopora. Uh, it is a very small group. Actually, we know till now 11 species, only 11 species, maybe because all of them live in the great depths and all are marine and very deep water they are found and they have small single cap-like shell on their back, giving them almost the shape of a limpet-like appearance or limpet-like shape. And there you can see number of the organs, either it may be nephridia or heart, which are not single, but instead of that, repeatedly in a series they are arranged one after the other. So that's why they resemble many times the annelidans and arthropods, where you see the many of the organs are metamerically arranged. Here also it looks like that. Uh, but whether their uh, relationship with the other phyla is not fully understood, and that's why it's an open question, I can say that. So, if you come to the important characters of this class Monoplacophora, they are undoubtedly bilaterally symmetrical and they have a segmented body, which is very unique for them. And as I have already told you, their shell, only a single shell or a single piece of shell, and that is also known as the wall. And they have head but no eyes and no tentacles. Uh, Foot is very flat and positioned on the ventral side. Um, of course, like all other molluscs, they do have mantle which encircle the body. It's a circular fold of a body wall, so it looks like a fringe surrounding the body wall. And they have external and serially arranged gills. As I have already told you, all those things are serially arranged. And even they have five pairs of serially arranged nephridia, which is used for excretion. And they have sex organs in two separate bodies. A good example for this is the neoplina. So this neoplina, it was discovered in 1952 by Danish oceanographic expedition in the west coast of Costa Rica. A new mollusca was first time found, uh, which has changed the fundamental understanding about the body structure of the molluscans. So this neoplina is a deep sea variety, and it was collected uh, from this Pacific Ocean at the depth of some 2,500 to 5,000 meters. And this neoplina is a bottom dweller. Actually, in the lives in the mud and feeds mainly on the protozoans, especially the foraminiferans. It also can eat on radiolarians and diatoms, um, based on the when the gut content was analyzed, they could see them. Uh, if you see the body of the neoplina, it is more or less bilaterally symmetrical, and they do exhibit metameric segmentation like these annelidans. This neoplina galanthiae, which is species, is about 3.7 centimeters long and 3.3 centimeters wide and 1.4 centimeters thick. The dorsal side of the body, that is on the back, was covered by a thin shell. And when the shell has a circular outline, and the shell is not flat, though it's flat, but in the center it is a little bit elevated and giving the appearance of an apex on the anteriorly and is slightly bent also. This shell is made up of thick calcareous prismatic layer and outer and innermost calcareous nacreous layer. These and even there is a periostracum on the outer side. All the three layers of this calcium carbonate, they are formed from the margin of the mantle. The short part of the body are usually seen from the ventral side. On the ventral side, you can see a large flat foot like that of the chiton which we have studied. Surrounding the foot and head, there's a deep groove, what is known as the pallial groove, in which five pairs of gills are situated. This is how it appears. See, this is the dorsal side, this is the shell, and it has a slightly elevated portion, what is known as the umbo. And here on the ventral side, you can see this is the foot, flat foot, and this is the mantle, and here is the mouth, and here lies the anus. And here there are gills which you can see on either side. This is the shell, what you call on the upper dorsal side. Um, Mouth is situated in the front of the foot, and anus is located at the posterior to the foot. See, this is the mouth, anterior to the foot, anus to the posterior to the foot. And the ciliated lobes, that is, especially the mouth, there's a transverse labial swelling which prolongs laterally into two ciliated lobes. These two ciliated lobes, the swelling of the ciliated lobes, labial swelling, what you call, on one on each side, you can expect. These ciliated lobes are compared to the anterior labial pulp of Unio, which you have seen. That's a freshwater bivalve. Anterior to the transverse swelling, there's a pair of small preoral tentacles, very small preoral tentacle, and there are 8 pairs of dorsoventral muscles in neoplina. Muscles originate or arise from the shell and extend up to the median wall. Uh, there are large flat ventral foot which occupies almost whole of the ventral side of the body. And actually the foot is modified in such a way that it is used for creeping movement, because I have told you the neoplina is found in the deep water and in the bottom, that is in the mud. Neoplina is a dioecious animal. The gonads are paired ventral organs which open into a third and fourth metanephridia. Uh, Actually, this third and fourth metanephridia, that function as a gonaduct, that is which carry the gametes. The sperms and ova discharge through this nephrophores, which are situated on the metanephridia. No other accessory reproductive organs are seen here. So here you can, sorry, this is a wrong photograph. The relationship of neoplina with other molluscs, if you see, uh, It's a very small group. As I have told you, entire monoplacophorans are 11 species that we know. Many peculiar features. As a result, uh, its precise relationship with other groups is always debatable. Metameric arrangements, dorsoventral muscles, gills, nephridia, and gonoids draw the phylogenetic relationship with the annelidans, because you have studied annelidans. Annelidans, you have seen the metameric arrangement. Even as regard to interphylar position, it shows lot of similarities with chiton, nautilus, and many other gastropods also. Even if you see the structure of the ideation of the body in the shell, that corresponds closely to another one, what is known as nautilus. See, this is how it appears. Uh, Features, there are certain features which are common in Neoplina as well as in chiton, especially the shape of the body, flat ventral foot, and the shell which is covering head and the mantle, and many dorsal ventral muscles, numerous gills, that shows relationship with the Neoplina, with the chiton. But this Neoplina also differs from chiton by having a single shell. In chiton there are 8 shells, and even statocyst and nephrophores functioning at the gonoducts in case of Neoplina, but not in case of the chiton. So this is the only one example that we are going to study about monoplacophora. Now we have to discuss about the last class, that is what is called as scapopoda. Scapopoda is one of the considerably big, compared to the monoplacophorans. Scapopodans are large groups. There are approximately uh, 900 species here. Uh, so these scapopodans are commonly called as tusk shells because the shell of the scapopoda resemble the tusk of the elephant. Elephant tusk. You all of you have seen the shape of the elephant tusk. They also here also they are of the same shape. Um, these scapopods are found all over the world in the oceans, and so this they are marine infernal carnivores. They are carnivores and they do feed on foraminiferans and other microorganisms, uh, which are selected and manipulated by they have the feeding tentacles that they possess. The feeding tentacles are also called as captacula in case of the scapopod. The tusk-like shell that they have is open at both the ends, uh, whereas the burrowing foot is burrowing, and captacula, that the feeding tentacles, they protrude out through the open shell on the anterior side. Although compared this Capopoda compared to other molluscans, this is the smallest class in terms of species diversity, but they have worldwide distribution. Even they are found from intertidal regions to depth up to 6,000 meters depth in the ocean. You can see this Capopoda. The scientific name Scapopoda is Scapa means shovel. Shovel ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾಯ್ತಾ, ಈ ನೆಲ ಅಗಿಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಇದು ಮಾಡ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರಲ್ಲ ಅದು. Poda means food, shovel feet. Um, Head of the animal which lacks eyes, whereas it is used for burrowing in marine mud and sediments. It can burrow because it can shovel the mud and burrow itself. The most distinctive feature of the scapopod, that is the tubular shell, which is open at both the ends. You might have seen the molluscan shell in other animals where in gastropods or other cells, the shell is open at only at one end. But um, in scapopoda, it is open at both the ends. Uh, so these scapopodons are gonochoristic or dioecious. I hope you know what is that. Eggs are released singly, one by one, through a right nephridium. Even the sperms are also released through the nephridium. Eggs are planktonic, that means they float in the water, and the fertilization is external. Most of these scapopods during their adult life lives buried in sand or mud, where their head and foot both are pointed downwards. But only the narrow posterior end of the shell sticks up to the seawater for water exchange and waste expulsion. Water flows inside through both the openings, but the excretory products and the waste products and the water exchange is through the posterior pore. Here you can see gills have been lost in the scapopores. Uh, the mantle tissue itself has to function as gill. After fertilization, which is external, eggs develop into free-swimming trochophore larvae. Then the trochophore larva metamorphose into bilaterally symmetrical veligar larva. And within 5 to 6 days, the veligar metamorphose. At this point, it becomes benthic, usually settle at the bottom and spend most of its adulthood there only. A good example is Dentalium, pulsellum. I have taken the example of Dentalium because it is most common in this region also. You must have seen the Dentalium whenever you have a chance to walk on the sea beaches. Dentalium shell at least, not the entire animal. Uh, Dentalium is a large genus of tooth shells or tusk shells, what we call. Uh, this genus Dentalium contains 50 species, known species, and about another 50 extinct species also. So the term dentalium comes from the Latin word dentis, means tooth. It is tooth-like, and based on the tooth or tusk-shaped form of these molluscans, they are called as dentalium. See, this is how it appears. This is the shell of a dentalium. Very beautiful. It looks like the tusk of an elephant also in shape. Not in size, if not in size, but in shape it is true. The mantle of this dentalium species entirely within the shell. Only the foot extends from the larger end of the shell, and that foot is used for burrowing through the mud and sand. It is the position of their head is also downwards, with uh, the apical end or the posterior end of the shell, which is open, that also projecting up into the water. These molluscans live on seafloor sediments, especially feeding on microscopic organisms, detritus and foraminifera members of protozoans. The shells are conical and curved in a plain spiral way. Usually they are whitish or ivory color. So because of that, the shell resembles a miniature elephant tusk. It's a miniature elephant tusk. But they are hollow at both the ends, and the opening at the larger end is the main and anterior aperture of the cell, and smaller opening is known as the apical aperture or the posterior aperture. Mantle cavity is totally inside the tube or the shell, and it is fused into the tube that surround the body of the animal. Tube is, as I have already told you, open at both the ends. The water is circulated around the mantle cavity by the beating of numerous cilia. Suppose if the dissolved oxygen level becomes less within the shell, this tail water is ejected through the top end of the shell, that is on the apical end of the shell, by the contraction of the food, and new fresh water is sucked inside. See, this is how it appears. This is the uh, larger end where the mouth and food projects outside. This is the apical end, small. So if the see here, these are the captacula, number of captacula. The outermost is the shell, and here you can see the nephridia. This is the stomach. Testis you can see here, and this is the dorsal mantle opening. So through this end or anterior end, head and foot can come outside. It is always upside down. This particular portion is buried because the head with the captacula can bury themselves in the mud or soil. Even the adults scapopores move and search for food with their buried head. Head is always buried. So to do so, they extend its muscular foot upwards, outwards, and then expands a muscle disc that surrounds the far end of the foot. Once this disc is spread out, it will serve as an anchor. This disc is helpful in anchoring for the scapopode and to pull against so that uh, being buried it can move. So these are the captacula. This is the head region. This is the shell. Head, if you see, it is not very conspicuous, and there are many tiny sense organs, what is known as statocyst, with the help of which the animal can detect the food. Otherwise, there are no eyes and other features normally associated with the head. Even if the eyes are there, it's of no use. There is no eyes, of course. Even if it is there, if you think, it is of no use because the head is buried always. Thread-like cilia bearing tentacles, that is known as the captacula, they also probe for the food. This captacula, they also probe for the food, and such as foraminifera, detritus, and even they can feed on occasional buried bivalves. Once the food is brought into the mouth, the large radula grind it up. In the mouth, there's a large radula here, and the radula is meant for grinding them. These adult scapopores are either male or female. Female release her eggs one at a time, and upon hatching, the young animals will go through a free swimming larval stage, what is known as trochophore larva, which is followed by veliger stage, like all molluscs. Before settling into an adult form in muddy seafloor, then uh, veliger metamorphoses into an adult and settles upside down in the muddy seafloor. Adults may live up to the depth of even 4,570 meters. The dentalium is used for many of these beautiful uh, ornamental value. It has been used by the tribals, and even nowadays, even non-tribals also use this like for many for ornamental purpose. Uh, Shell. The number of miniature tentacles which are found around the food there, which are called as captacula. Even if you see the vascular system, the blood circulatory system is very rudimentary and lacking auricles in the heart. Even they don't have corresponding gills also and blood vessels. But the blood is held in the sinuses throughout the body cavity and pumped through the body by the rhythmic action of the foot, not by the action of the heart, but by the rhythmic action of the foot. The blood is pumped through the body and it is stored in the sinuses. Even if you see the nervous system, generally it is similar to that of the gastropores. So, uh, this is what I wanted to discuss as far as the classification of these uh, molluscans are concerned. Is it clear? Yes. ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತಾ ಕಾಣ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತಾ
Yes,
Very
sir.
okay. Now, without wasting time, I will move to the next topic in the mollusca only. There is one more small topic, general topic, which speaks about the foot and shell in mollusca. Because you have seen lot of shells and lot of food. I mean, changes in the food. So that's why they have mentioned it clearly. So there, as a food and shell in mollusca, which we have to discuss. And about this, I will also give you the typed notes which will be circulated within a couple of days. So the phylum mollusca, which all of you know, more than 1 lakh specimens are described, which are widespread marine, and they have a variety of body plans. Even size also. Their size ranges from 1 meter to 18 meters. Many large, even small, and very significant as food for the human beings. They are very, very important. And that has been divided into gastropoda, cephalopoda, bivalve, aplacophora, monoplacophora, and scapopoda, polyplacophora and scapopoda. These all things we have decided. Now, already discussed. Now, let's move on to the shells in case of the molluscs. So, the shells are really the beauty in case of the molluscs. Probably all of you would love to collect the shells whenever you have a chance to visit the seashore. Beautiful, beautiful colors, shapes, calcareous shells. So, in snails, bivalves, you can see the shells. And the shells are irrespective of the type and shape, they are all made out of calcium carbonate, what you call the limestone. And this calcium carbonate is secreted by the mantle. See here the different shapes of the shell. Even the next photograph will show you the beauty of the shells of the uh, molluscans. Even much more are there. These are only a small example. Even the department, when you come for the come to the college physically, just you visit the department. There's a good collection of shells, and all of them are exhibited. So now each group has their own type of shell. Gastropoda is the largest class. Here, in the gastropoda, the shell is always a single piece, univalve, and may be coiled or may not be, but in most of the cases that has been coiled by torsion, by rotating 180 degree. And In any gastropod shell, the apex, this is the oldest part of the shell and this is the newest part, whorl. And they develop in whorls. You can see one whorl, second whorl, third whorl, fourth whorl, like that. The whorls. And apex contain the oldest whorl and but there is the smallest whorl also. The shells may be coiled or uncoiled. Coming to the bivalves, the name itself says bivalve. There are two shells laterally, right and left, compressor shell, almost flat. All in Kannada, what you call belchu, they belong to this class, and the shell are compressor shells. And the shells are held together by the hinged margin. This is the hinged margin where both the shells, this is the hinged margin, separated, and where the two shells are held together. But in this part, they are open actually. So shells are held together by hinge ligaments. So they can be used as open and closed like the ligaments, hinged. And on the shell, there is slightly elevated portion, what is known as umbo. This is the oldest part of the shell. And then the calcium carbonates are secreted in circles or whorl, which form the growth lines. You can see number of lines. These are known as growth lines. By counting the number of growth lines, you can estimate the age of the shell, age of the animal also. Even the growth occurs in concentric rings. We can see. See the concentric rings. Then coming to cephalopoda, the shells. If you look into an example, there is the nautilus. They are made up of buoyant a series of gas chambers. Here you can see inside. You can see the series of gas chambers. This is the oldest part, and this is the newest part, and the smallest, and this is the last one, the largest. Inside which you can see uh, the animals. Uh, but in cephalopoda, the cuttlefish, they have small curved shell and internal shell because the mantle completely encloses this shell. So the shells are not visible from outside. A small stripe called the pen that has been used and that has been uh, enclosed by the mantle. See, this is a small shell, what is also known as the pen in case of the cuttlefishes. So it is not visible from outside. Others do not have shells. Of course, they do have in a monoplacophora. Already I have told you there's a single shell. And in Polyplacophora, there are series of shells like chiton on the back and many plates which are also joined and articulate and provide flexibility. Now coming to the foot in mollusca, foot has lot of work functions to carry out here. But the major function of the foot is attachment as well as locomotion. In some, it is also used for burrowing. Even in some, it is used for pumping the blood also, as in case of the scapopods. The foot is highly modified in case of the molluscs. Modifications, main two type of modifications which we can see is the hatchet foot, which you see in clams, and siphon jet in squids you can see. Especially the foot secretes mucus, and the mucus helps in the attachment even also in gliding. Snails and bivalves, they can extend the foot out of the shell by engorgements with the blood. The blood flows and it extends. And in fact, the entire phylum Mollusca is characterized by the pronounced development of musculature in the foot, which is the primary locomotor organ. But the mode of locomotion is not same in all the molluscans. They differ. And based on the different mode of locomotion and living in the various environment of the water and to a certain extent on the land also, foot in mollusca shows great diversity in shape and forms. This variation or diversity of the food in case of the molluscans is basically due to various physiological activities. That means whether the animal is creeping or crawling, burrowing, leaping, looping, swimming, also helps in some reproduction. Even in some of the parasitic uh, molluscans, the food is modified to form sucker, byssus apparatus, etc. If you look into the most primitive type of the food, which is most simplest form of food also, that is considered to be a broad ventral flat sole, where the foot is like a broad ventral flat sole, uh, which are found in Polyplacophora, Gastropoda, Bivalvia. But along with this, it has been also observed that the foot is very well adapted to certain structures like parapodia or epipodia. What is parapodia? It's a lobe-like lateral extension. Parapodia is a lobe-like lateral extension which is given out from the ventral sole, from the edge of the ventral sole. So that, for example, in aplysia, you can say that also acts as fin. Whereas epipodia is a projecting paired ridges. Epipodia is a paired ridges or folds developing from the side or base of the foot. They develop from the side or base of the foot along its entire length. They may be compared with papillae or tentacles. In one organism, that is the fissurella, the epipodia is very prominent. These foods are variously modified in different species of the gastropods, you can say. Now let's try to see what are the modifications that has been happened to this food. For example, the food has creeping or crawling organ. In Aplacophorans. True molluscan food is absent in Aplacophorans, but some structure may be regarded as the starting point. So Aplacophoran, that's all. Ventral food in Chaetoderma, Limifossa, they are all absent. The food is absent here. Aplacophoran. In Pneumania, a mid-ventral groove from the mouth to anus with a non-muscular ciliated ridge can be compared or it can be homologous with the foot of other molluscans because this ventral groove from mouth to anus with non-muscular ciliated ridge, they serve as a locomotory organ. So that's why we can call that as the foot, and that has to glide or creep over the substratum with a mucus tray. In class Polyplacophora, for example, the chiton, the foot is broad, muscular, and extends the entire ventral surface of the body, very large, flattened. In other example like chitonellus and crypsoplax, the foot is narrow, whereas in chiton it is very broad. In ichnochiton, the anterior portion of the foot is elongated and large. This foot usually helps to creep or glide on the rocky substratum because the foot is associated with the muscles, and muscular wave activity helps them to creep, and even also mucus gland which lubricates them so that easily they can creep or glide. Even this mucus also helps the polyplacophorans to attach firmly to the rocks by generating a suction, and slimy also because mucus is also secreted here. See the ventral foot of the chiton, very broad. In monoplacophora, neoplena and vema, the foot is centrally placed. They are broad and flattened. If you look into it, they are almost circular in outline. Here also the foot is supported by muscles, and this muscular movement helps the animals to creep. Coming to the largest class of the molluscans, in most gastropods, the foot is an elongated as well as flat, creeping sole supported by many mucus generating glands. In one subclass, that is pulmonata, under the class gastropod, the foot is undivided. As a result, it becomes a very large flat lobe containing number of pedal glands. Here, the foot is used for creeping on a mucus trail because mucus is a lubricant here. All terrestrial pulmonates, they have retained this very primitive type of foot. See the foot. So in this pulmonates, the locomotion is achieved by a monotaxic wave. That means a single wave, the amplitude of the wave proceeds across the entire width of the body from one end to another end. In another group in the gastropod, that the prosobangs, an example is patella, is well developed it has a well developed ventral foot with a flat creeping sole, and this is adapted for clinging or moving over the rocks. The creeping foot is contractile. It can enlarge and shrink. Some even in prosobranchs, the foot may show some local modifications. In class Capopoda, the foot is a burrowing organ, which just now we have discussed. The dentalium foot is conical, trilobed, and protrusible from the shell. It can be brought in or out. In siphonodentalium, one example, at the terminal end of the foot is a retractile disc with a papillated margins. So this foot of this scapopores is adapted rowing habit. It is like rowing the boat in the sand. And there's one co-foot which is buried in the sand and the lateral the foot. With the help of which the captacula they can bury themselves. Tentacles, see this is the foot. A wedge-shaped foot which is used for burrowing or so it looks like rowing. Again, coming back to the class gastropoda, in Terebella, the ends of the foot they can extend or retract with the flow of blood. They also function as an anchor. In Natica, which I have already told you, a deep transverse groove as a semicircular flap and a metapodium is provided with lateral parapodium. These animals are adapted for burrowing on a soft bottom habitat, sand or mud. The parapodium it functions as a plow, plows the land and also anchoring. Whereas the dorsal flap-like fold on the foot functions as a protective shield. In one example, there is harpa. The parapodium is separated by a constriction. See, this is the foot of the gastropose. In the class bivalves, especially in Anodonta and Unio, the foot is almost triangular and like a plow, which is used for burrowing the organ and also used as creeping organ. In some like Solemia and Euldia, the foot has a flattened sole and two sides of the sole can be folded to form a blade-like edge. Because of this flattened sole with two sides of the sole being folded, which can easily penetrate into the mud or sand, so that they have become a soft bottom burrowers. See the foot in case of the bivalves. Even foot is functioned as a leaping organ also. This is in some of the very characteristic in some of the molluscans like cardium, where the foot is bent upon itself as a leaping organ. It can leap. Even in trigonia, it is compressed anteroposteriorly like a keel. In another example, in Poromia, the foot is curved with well-formed protractor and retractor muscles. In Mytilus, the foot is cylindrical and it acts as a spring tail. Another median triangular outgrowth in Birabia acts as a leaping organ. Even foot is seen not only in locomotory animals with locomotion, even in sessile forms also. Number of sessile bivalves, such as mytillas, perna, oysters, which are always sedentary forms and attached to substrates, to the rocks, corals, shells, woods. That is by either by byssus or by one wall to the substrate. Byssus is a bunch of fine silky threads by which many of the bivalves are attached to the objects. In some, the foot is also functioning as a swimming organ. For this, again the foot is variously modified. Even there's a development of parapodia in many forms. And all of you know parapodia is a fan-like in case of aplysia, and it helps in the pelagic existence. In Pteropoda, they have a wing-like process. In Oxagoras, the parapodia are hollow and possess fin-like outgrowth. The most notable transformation of the foot as a swimming organ is visible in the cephalopods. The foot is partly modified into muscular arm and tentacles around the head for food capturing, addition, locomotion, even partly into siphon for jet propulsion. Even foot in some is functioning as an helping organ locomotion, especially some of the male cephalopods. During the breeding season, a small arm is modified from the foot for the transfer of the sperm to the female, and that is known as hectocotylus. If you look into the example of sepia, the fourth left arm of the male functions as hectocotylus, whereas in loligo and octopus, the third right arm is modified as hectocotylus. And these modifications may also include suckers and other forms. So this is what I wanted to discuss as far as the shell and foot in mollusca is concerned. Uh, about the foot and shell in mollusca, I will send you the notes in a couple of days. ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತಾ ಕಾಣ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತಾ ಹೇಳಿ ಓಂಕಾರ್.
Yes, sir.
So if you have any difficulty or doubts, you please feel free to ask me. Otherwise, for the day, I will stop here because you may be having another class. Alwa. Okay, thank you. In the next class, I have to start with another phylum Echinodermata, which will be the last phylum. Okay, thank you for attending.
Thank you, sir.